County, which is definitely considered a rural area. It's typically waterman families, farming families, but that population is changing. The island itself, Kent Island, is not the whole county, obviously, but we are literally an isolated island. So the students that are there, sometimes when they graduate high school, know what is on the island, and that's it. We have our own English accents, we have our own vernacular that students use, but when migrant populations are coming in, they are now even further isolated on this island. They have language issues and cultural differences between Kent Island, their home culture.
The Delmarva region has seen exponential growth rates in ELL growth. In fact, when we wrote the first project, some of the counties were reporting about 200% increases over a period of about 5 years. And then when we proposed a new project, some of the figures were about 700%.
I was put into a study hall class at my high school, and we had to combine 2 of the study halls, of which 48 ESOL students landed in there. And being the teacher, they would come to me and ask me to help them on various assignments, whether it was body parts for biology or photosynthesis for science. Had no idea how to teach them, talk to them, get my point across. So I was very frustrated with that. Being a teacher, you want to help, and it just made me aware that how frustrated they must be when this is occurring in all their classes.
After working with some migrant families in Queen Anne's County, I realized the struggles that these families were encountering, and unfortunately the bias that comes with them not speaking English sometimes. We expect these people to speak English, but nobody's teaching them how to.
I had originally was in the graduate program for writing, and I found that it really wasn't making me a better teacher. So I knew that I needed to get to a program that would increase my teaching skills and my strategies for all types of students.
In the task.
I think I just never realized as an English teacher that language was not really what my objectives were, because the assumption to me was they already know the language, so we're going to do things with the language.
Yes.
And now I'm like, wow, these are language activities. So I think that's really been eye-opening to me, where these probably foreign language teachers have been doing that. You're always teaching language, but to me, I'm like using English to teach other things.
Yeah, and this is why it's become so challenging, because in addition now to all of you teaching your content, you're going to now also have to teach the language that bears the burden of that content. The basic idea of the project is to provide a form of training to teachers that's accessible to them. And that is a high incentive program. What we found, and this was actually a personal response, about 10 years ago I went into a school to deliver a professional development training, and it was about 3:30, and I walked in and I was all enthusiastic and I had all these ideas, and then these teachers sort of straggled in one after the other, and they just looked exhausted. It was 3:30, they'd been there since 8:30, and I was going to deliver a workshop of about 3 hours, and they didn't, there was a lot of curiosity and interest, but there wasn't really a buy-in, why should I do this? So I decided that if there was ever going to be a training, there had to be some incentive. Teachers had to be getting something out of it as well. And so these programs are really designed to be all graduate and credential bearing. These are all grads courses, and they're designed around the teacher's schedule. So in the spring semester, we offer the courses on the weekends, and they're run as all-day institutes. And in the summer, they're run as all-day classes. And this allows for a lot of teachers to have an opportunity to go back, study the content in a detailed way, get their sort of credentials, plus at the same time, help their own students. So everyone's winning. And I called it an empowerment model, because they're moving away from a dependency on a professor who comes into the school, and they're now empowered. They have the knowledge, and then they sort of disseminate it in their schools. So that was really the core idea, and we've sort of developed that idea as we've gone through the years.
I like the way the program's set up. I know that some people think that 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 40 hours is too much, but because the focus is so intense, it really makes me categorize all the information, and I feel like I can focus on it more than having it scattered out.
Our courses kind of are divided into a theoretical component and then a sort of a practical, realistic application. And so what happens is that teachers, to give you an example, if they come into a principles of linguistics class, they'll get the theory of how, the sound system of English works, or how the syntactic system works. But the practical thing is, how are you going to take that sound system and help and assist a student who's having a problem with pronunciation? Or how are you going to take that knowledge of syntax and then create a useful and very relevant activity that's going to get them to correct an error that they keep making? So in a sense, all of our courses are to have teachers both learn the theory that underpins effective praxis, but at the same time deliver innovative practices on their own.
Yeah, I definitely use some of the strategies that I have learned in these 5 courses. I think they're extremely beneficial. It's funny, having taught for 15 years, you think you know it all, and you find out you really don't. And when you find out that something's as exciting as this, you're really eager to get back to school to teach.
I just want to take these strategies that I've learned and put them into practice immediately, and hopefully see all these kids that have been struggling and muddling through to make some real improvements and empower them and feel like, wow, I am making a difference.
Currently, right now, we have a speaker who's come in. As soon as she leaves, we're going to evaluate that. And all of this evaluative material, both qualitative, because we get feedback. Every course is evaluated by an end of course evaluation. We evaluate our mode of delivery, we evaluate our accessibility. And then at the end, sometime of each project year, we look through all of our data, and then we look at things that we can improve. So to give you some examples, when we first started the program, we were sort of running the courses together, and teachers were getting very tired and very exhausted. So we started to separate the courses, build in a break. We also developed a teamed model where the first and the last 2 courses were taught by the same professor, so that they were working with the same momentum. We also tried to limit the cohort think, because we noticed that when groups are together for a long period, they tend to sort of develop a similar mentality and lose their originality. So we did a lot of things in the program to sort of change that.
I think that's the most important thing as a teacher. You have to be aware and reflect and critical of your own teaching skills and strategies in order to meet the needs of all students. And most of us teach the way we were taught, and that doesn't work for all kids, especially, today.
Right. This is a type of instruction that requires a lot of activities-based instruction, a lot of variety. So it's not a program where you can just sort of sit and lecture all day. And teachers are amazing teachers, so to impress them, you have to really, really know what you're doing. You have to know your content, you have to know how to deliver it.
Right.
We have an opportunity with this program to teach English through the content area to our immigrant populations, but also our own students that need help with their writing, with their speaking, reading, and listening skills that we test every day.
So it's not just training content area teachers, but it's also giving a huge emphasis to the science, technology, engineering, and math teachers. And the reason being, more and more of math content is linguistically embedded. So you're going to have problems that are actually evoked in and through language. And if a student doesn't understand the language in which the formula is rendered, they have a very hard time performing. And so we looked at a lot of the data, and we sort of saw that this LEP, and that's the federal classification or limited English proficient students, in some cases were underperforming and performing even below special ed students. And what we find is that this underperformance actually happens in the sort of grade move from elementary to middle. And that's really when language becomes much more complex, it's more context reduced, there are less concrete structures available. And so we found that that's where we need teachers to sort of have more training. So we ended up sending out a survey to over 400 teachers on the peninsula. That would be 7 counties. And the results that came back pointed to an overwhelming need for training in all content areas, but specifically STEM.
So hopefully I will be an advocate for our ESOL populations, our English language learners, and also a source of knowledge for our teachers in the content area. I'd like to be able to give them the strategies to help their students with the language aspects of their class.
With this sort of funding, we've been able to provide over 100 teachers in the span of all of the projects we've run with graduate knowledge and expertise, and they have, based on our data, impacted the lives and educational potential of over 1,600 ELL students. And that's probably on an annual basis. Right. And that would not have been possible if it hadn't been for federal assistance.
Right. We only have 2 high schools. They're very different. One is in a very community developed area and the other is a farming type area. Those students graduate with the same county diploma. They're going to the same places. So to bring back my knowledge to those schools is important to connect those language skills they're leaving with.